Welcome. I'm happiness coach Teresa Greco, and this is the Steps to Happiness show. Here, my guests and I talk about the steps you can take towards a happier, more fulfilled, authentic life. Hello, and welcome to the final episode of Season 1 of the Steps to Happiness show on 105.9 The Region. I'm your host, Teresa Greco, happiness coach, author, editor, writer, educator, and Reiki master. On my show, we've explored the latest physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being practices that can help lead you back to the happiness that's within you. Have you enjoyed what you've been listening to on the show? This fall, the Steps to Happiness show with Teresa Greco goes live on Soulivity TV, which can be found online at soulivity.com. So follow me on Instagram at Teresa Greco _Steps to Happiness, or on Facebook at Steps to True Happiness with Teresa Greco for the latest information about my show's second season. Today's show will be a culmination of the happiness principles and practices that were covered over the last 14 weeks, with the intent to leave you motivated, inspired to go inward and tap into the happiness that always exists at your core. Although the world can lead us away from the joy, peace, and harmony that we are by having us feeling negative emotions, we always have the choice to make time to reconnect with the happiness and love that is within us. We must remember that we can't control anything outside of ourselves. We can only control our response to it. This has been a rough year for many of us, and the mission of the show has been to offer those ideas and strategies from a variety of guests that can help us to navigate the turbulent waters by throwing out a lifeline. I've had real life stories from my guests who have shared how they've turned their life around over the past year and are coming out the other side healthier and happier people. They all made a decision to change the life they were living. They committed to the necessary steps required and took action towards the life they want and the person they really want to be. Stories like this let us know what's possible when we choose happiness over anger, joy over anxiety, and hope over despair. Stories like this illustrates what happens when we love ourselves enough to put our health and well-being first, so that we can better serve others once our own cup is full. And stories like this remind us that we're all meant to shine and to share what's unique and special within us. It's not just in some of us, we all have it. And when we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we free ourselves from our own fear to be who we really are, our presence automatically liberates others to feel that they can do the same. With that being said, I wanted to offer you one last powerful story. My guest today is a well-known national TV host with the Weather Network, podcaster, public speaker, and master of ceremonies. Christopher Mei, hello, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Teresa. Really appreciate this. This is cool.
Christopher, why don't you tell us a little bit about what was happening and how you were feeling before the evening we met?
Well, the pandemic didn't help anything, and turning 50 didn't help anything either. And it just became a perfect storm. It was a combination of, I don't know, you can call it midlife crisis. I don't know. But because all those things you mentioned that I do, aside from even the television thing, to tell you the truth, everything got ripped away on me because I was used to going into a television station jam full of people, but my parent company did such a great job of protecting everybody from the initial wave of COVID. They sent everybody home before most other companies thought to do it, which was amazing. But the problem is I was suddenly on this deserted island with very few survivors. And so that took a toll on my mental health. And then of course all the public speaking disappeared and the future of it disappeared and the shops closed up, and really everything that I had come to know as defining me, which I know is wrong because I know that's what you talk about. I did my research. It drove me into kind of an emotional abyss. It also doesn't help that that I struggle with. I'm treated for, but still struggle with obsessive compulsive disorder, cognitive OCD. So I don't need to have things in a particular order or anything like that. But the world needs to be running properly. Otherwise, I will ruminate on potential solutions to which there are no solutions. That's what the disorder is all about. So it was pretty dark when I met you. So sorry.
So thank you for sharing that. Now, Chris and I had been invited to be guests on the Brian Crombie TV show a few months back. I was being interviewed that evening to speak about my journey as a happiness coach and to share my top 5 steps to happiness. This interview had an impact on Chris that I'll have him share with you now.
Well, when you mentioned that, because I had no idea what midlife crisis even was. All I knew about it was what you'd see in sitcoms and stand-up comedians and stuff, like always making fun of it. It's like not really a thing. And then you talked about your transition into the 40s. Sorry, everybody. And I went, oh, wait a minute. And when you were sitting there and you were quite vulnerable discussing what you had gone through, I went, wait a minute. That's exactly in many cases what I'm going through. And then this is what hit me straight in the face, was when you talked about how you were letting everything else around you define who you were, where you would go, events you would attend. Is any of this sounding familiar? People you were with, your all your degrees, your diplomas, your certificates. Am I the perfect this, that, or the other? And you realize by reaching inside yourself, spiritually, that it was that isn't who we are. And the thing is, the frustration with it was I knew this. I have done so much reading from so many authors, and a lot of the authors because remember afterwards I knew you had quoted or you had read, and we got talking about all the different authors that we shared in common that we both read. And so I'd been down this road before, but I let it slip. And you were here in front of me talking about all these things that you were doing and you needed to do better and you were conscious of. And I thought, that's so in sync with what I was going through, what I have been through, what I thought I was better at, and obviously needed to reintroduce myself to.
And so, can you tell us about some of the things that have changed for you since that evening?
Well, the very first thing I did after I met you was after we, because we went on afterwards, stuff like that, and talked at a greater length about it. I went home and started rereading all the stuff that I knew you had already read, because there was evidence of that in what you were talking about. So I went back and I started rereading all the different books, the Eckhart Tolles and the Joe Dispenzas and the Deepak Chopras. And I went back and started reading a few different things from Carl Sagan and Stephen Hawking. And I just got obsessed. Here it is again, with more reading, to just refamiliarize myself with what I knew I was familiar with, you see. So that helped. And it helped me to calm the anxiety around the frustration, because my anxiety is triggered by guilt, and I felt guilty that I had let it all slip away. So that helped calm that down. And then it gave me the inspiration to dig deeper and broaden my research horizons. I'm not playing into any self-help. Oh, I'm going to do this. I just like to know more. I love to know more. And that's what I did. I got into reading more, and I got into reading newer things, so I could maybe round it out. And I had to take a more introspective look at myself to figure out how in the world could I have let this happen. So I just retraced, just re-engineered my mind again, and I feel a lot better for it. I feel stronger for it, to tell you the truth. I feel a lot stronger for it.
So, Christopher, so it appears that you forgot to tap into the spiritual part of yourself. And so why do you feel that that's an important component for you and how you live your life, that when you're not tapping into that spiritual side, that what happens?
I'm letting the mental construct of who Christopher Mei is. People will know me as the podcaster, or the TV host, or the public speaker, or the funny guy at the party, or the tall guy with the voice and blah 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 and all that other stuff. And then I like you were talking about, and you've talked about before. Am I do I look right? Do I look the part? Do I sound the part? Am I am I the best I can be at all of this? But who's deciding that? Everybody else is deciding that for me, because I'm taking the mental feedback from everybody else. But everybody else basically gets the cinematic version of who I am. So tapping into the more spiritual side, which I am very adept at, it's more the truer version of me. And I subscribe to observe the observer. So it's just a matter of me stepping back and observing this mental construct, this character that I have been implicit or complicit in creating with the general public, and going, I see who that person is, but that's a portrayal of who I truly am, and I can do better, and I can and by tapping more deeper into the spiritual side, I'm more confident in who I am, and not what everybody or who everybody else expects me to be, which you can never live up to. You cannot live up to it, because everybody else has their own internal struggles. So their interpretation of who you are is constantly going to be changing or evolving. And how can you keep up with that? Because there's so many people that you come in contact with. It is impossible. Be the best you for you. And you can't do that unless you are within yourself. You can't do that by trying to constantly be the version that everybody else has made you out to be, that you are, of course, complicit in.
I love that it allows you to show up in the world as your authentic self. I love
Yeah.
that. Now, we've since kept in touch and decided that our chance encounter could develop into a working relationship as well. Do you want to tell them what we've created?
We have created a podcast, everybody, and you can very soon. It's I got word from our distributor that it should be up pretty soon. We Teresa and I got together and we created a podcast, basically talking. It's actually, because I know what you do on 105.9 The Region, and what I do in reading and all my other public speaking stuff, and all of your public speaking and motivational speaking. This is more a stripped down personal side of Teresa Greco and Christopher Mei. And we discussed the things that we were basically just discussing after we met each other that night, which was a more holistic approach to spirituality. And that basically is our podcast, called In Spirit. So very soon, wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, Alexa, everywhere. It's going to be everywhere. Look for In Spirit. And, and basically, because I'll be honest, years and years ago, I would have loved to have had a podcast like this that I could have listened to, because when I needed a podcast, or I needed something to listen to at night or during the day the most, everything was always still somebody either talking at me or talking beyond me. And I just wanted to be part of a conversation with somebody that had maybe been down the same road that I'd been down, and you were. And so that's how we came together. And I think there's a lot of other people that are out there. I know there are a lot of other people out there. And this is the podcast that I always hoped that I could have found when I needed it. So here it is.
Thank you. So if people would like to connect with you after the show and maybe find out more about the podcast, where can they do that?
I have just an Instagram account, because again, mental construct. I don't want everybody else invading my place of zen. So it is, of course, now I'm talking about it on a radio station. It's Meditate Nation. You can find me. I go by the handle Meditate Nation on Instagram. And I have, and we just, please keep it spiritual. I have no problem blocking anybody who wants to talk about anything else that I could talk to you about at a pub. Okay. This is a place of Zen, and this is a place that other people, I'm hoping, will go in order to find some sort of mindfulness. So we can keep all the rest of the other stuff to wherever you happen to find me, on Facebook or Twitter or anywhere else like that. So Meditate Nation.
Thank you for sharing your story today about finding your happiness by reconnecting with your spirit.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me on here to talk about it, because again, I think it's important. I think more people, if they are, you don't even need to have a ton of confidence. All you have to have is the wantingness to be your true authentic self. And this should be a very easy conversation for more people to have. So I hope that you and I continue to make a difference like this, because I know you are with your radio show, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the final episode of Season 1 of the Steps to Happiness show with Teresa Greco. As I mentioned at the beginning of today's show, the last 14 weeks have covered many principles and practices that contribute to one's inner happiness. But if you were to ask me, Teresa, as a happiness expert, what are your top 5 steps to happiness to leave us with until Season 2? I'd like to invite Tina Cortese to step into my role and interview me at this time to share my top 5 steps.
Well, thank you, Teresa. Pleasure to be here with you. And as our audience knows, I'm the station manager. So let's get to it. What is step number 1? Meditation.
So meditation, I believe, is that gateway practice that will start your journey to going inward. So as I was living my life according to external expectations, meditation was, like I said, that gateway practice that allowed me to stop and to really go inward to connect with a part of myself that I hadn't been tapping into. And it is like tapping into your inner magic. So when you tap into that, then a whole new world opens up. So meditation is something that I adopted eight years ago. At the time was very woo-woo and weird. And my family even thought that it was part of a cult. They're like, Teresa, what are you doing? I had been praying my whole life. When I was instructed to meditate, I really didn't even know, what that was or how to do it. I went to a meditation center. They helped me to get started. Now meditation is such a buzzword. There's so many apps and coaches and gurus and online courses. It's just, there's so much available now to really get started with meditation, which I'm so thankful for. So if you haven't yet started that, I encourage you to find a vehicle that works for you, whether it is reaching out to a center, whether it is taking a course, whether it is just going on to YouTube. There's a wealth of content on YouTube to get started with meditation. But when you do that, like I said, it's that gateway to opening up to another part of yourself that maybe, and even as my first guest on the show said today, that it was a part that he had neglected. And that when we do that, we're living so much of our life on the exterior instead of realizing the innate potential that's available within us when we go inward.
Can I ask you one quick question about meditation? Do you meditate every day, and how long?
So it is something that when you're first getting started, it could be something that you need to build up to, where it's just like a minute of time where you try to calm your mind and not think about other things. And habit and the way the brain works, it does want to bring other thoughts into our head all the time, but it's really trying to focus and stilling the mind so that you're not thinking about those other things, and which we'll also get into about what happens when we're not in the present moment and we are thinking about other things. And it could be something, like I said, you start with a minute, then you increase it to 2 to 3, and it just gets longer. Guided meditations are also a great way to get started because it actually gives you something to concentrate on or to visualize on, so that it, instead of you just trying to sit there with nothing to do, is that it actually gives you something to focus on.
Okay, step number 2
is self-love. So meditation, again, was that vehicle that allowed me to go inward and to tap into the unconditional love that was inside of myself. And it was only at that point that when I discovered the amount of unconditional love that was inside of me, that I was not loving myself the way that I needed to. And that because I was living my life according to external expectations and trying to fulfill and make everybody else happy, I was not loving, respecting, or honoring myself in many cases. And that was showing up in my external environment because my relationships, both personally and professionally, were not in a good place. And it was because I wasn't in a good place because I wasn't loving myself first. And so when I realized that all of this love that was inside of me, and it had me then reflecting how I wasn't loving myself on the outside, it basically awoke me to the fact that I had been speaking negatively lead to myself really my whole life, that the amount of negative self-talk that was going on in my head for years about, that I wasn't pretty enough, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't athletic enough, I wasn't good at a variety of things that were basically all told to me my whole life, that the amount of bullying that I went through and negative comments made from people that you look up to, your family, friends, teachers, spiritual leaders, co-workers, that the negative things you hear about yourself are then ones that you adopt for yourself. And the self-love that I discovered allowed me to realize that I wasn't loving myself the way I needed to. And that was something that I needed to work on. And there's in my book that will be coming out later this year, entitled The Steps to True Happiness, it goes through a lot of the practices and principles that I use to help me really fall in love with myself and then to fall in love with my life afterwards.
Your third step in the 5 steps to true happiness
is having an attitude of gratitude. Gratitude is directly correlated with happiness. Research proves that. So the more grateful you are for the things in your life, both positive and negative, the happier you feel on the inside. So it's important for us to recognize, especially in times like this when there are a lot of negative things happening, is to take a step back and recognize all the small things that are going right for us in our lives. That we have, comfortable beds to sleep in, a roof over our head, the ability to get up and make our way into the washroom to start our day, that cup of coffee that I love in the morning, the clothes that I have to put on, the job that I have to go to, the family and friends that surround me, the helpful people at the grocery store, the conveniences like the electricity in my home, the clean running water. It's just really when you take a step back, you look at all of the things that we really have that are going right for us, and to give thanks for that. And then, like I said, that automatically has you feeling better, that you can only feel one emotion at a time. And when you're feeling grateful, then you're not feeling any of the negative emotions at that time.
Love that one. Step number 4, being in the now.
Being in the now is really attuning all of your senses. It's like the practice of mindfulness. It's calling everything, all your senses, to the present moment. So being very aware of what you're seeing with your eyes, hearing with your ears, smelling with your nose, tasting with your mouth, feeling on your skin. It's pausing. It's stopping the autopilot that we go through life not even realizing how we get to work or how we end up at the end of the day having done the same things on, like I said, on autopilot, on ritual, on habit, on routine. And that before we know it, it's like 10, 15 years have gone by, and really, what have you done different? And so being in the moment really allows us to appreciate what's in front of us now. And that is where joy and happiness is. It's in the present moment. And that means because you're not focused on the past. And a lot of the sadness and rejection and depression stems from us living a lot of our life in the past, even though we're here, but we're ruminating about it. We're thinking about what didn't work out, what we would have wanted to have been different, the mistakes, the regrets, all of that continue because of how our brain operates. That, we covered in the show that 98% of our mind, we live out of the subconscious, which means we're always pretty much in autopilot unless we tap into that 2% that allows us to be conscious of the present moment. And we're also not focused on the present, on the future. And that's also something that we tend to do, is to think about what we have to do later, what we have to do, what we're planning for in a year from now or whatnot, which then steals the joy that's in the present moment.
Love that. Take in that moment. Okay, step number 5.
Is following your bliss. And what that means is really becoming aware of those activities that really fill you up, that it allows you to be in spirit. In spirit, inspired really means to be in spirit, which means you're in the present moment and you are feeling the joy in whatever that moment is providing you, whether you're cooking, whether you're dancing, whether you're listening to music, whether you're watching Netflix, whether you're reading a book, whether you're walking your dog, whether you're in the company of people, whatever that is, whatever fills your cup. It's important for you to know what those blissful activities are for you and to make note of them, that when you participate participate in them, you're like, I really feel good. I know that when I'm feeling a bit drained at the end of a work day, I'm like, oh, I need to like tap into my bliss. And so for me, like now that the weather's nicer, it's me getting out, going for a walk, listening to the podcasts that I love that make me feel really motivated and inspired myself. It's listening to the music that automatically makes me dance, or that when that song comes on, making, like I said, a mental list of all of those things that make you happy so that you can use those activities to bring you back to the happiness that's within you.
At this point, I'd like to leave you with the thought for the day. Life happens, and realistically, it's impossible to feel happy all the time. And that's okay. We can allow ourselves the opportunity to feel other emotions like pain, heartache, anger, and frustration when an occasion arises, like a death in the family, a bad day at work, or sitting in heavy traffic. The important thing to remember, however, is that we don't have to unpack our bags and stay in those emotions. We can acknowledge the negative emotions and then remember who we really are, and then take the necessary steps we need to get back to the happiness within us that's always there. True happiness is unwavering. It's not fleeting like the pleasure we feel on vacation or when we acquire that designer purse or sports car. Many people are waiting to be happy for when things outside themselves change how they feel on the inside. They're waiting for that relationship, that position at work, or that new possession. However, when you know happiness is your essential nature, then all you need to do is to stop, to observe, and to return to the happiness that exists at your core. When we go inward and nurture our spiritual selves in addition to our physical, mental, and emotional selves, we are also creating a similar effect outside of us. And the most common emotions we feel are a love for life, a joy for existence, and a deep sense of gratitude. It is when we merge all aspects of ourselves do we realize that we are whole and perfect. We are enough just as we are, and that we are worthy of everything that we want to do, be, or have. In that moment of awakening to who you really are, when you are feeling those heartfelt emotions at your core, you are falling in love with yourself and falling in love with your life. You become tapped into your inner magic, and the life you've always dreamed of begins to flow to you in the form of synchronicities, serendipities, and coincidences. Remember to make a conscious choice to be present and in the now, appreciating what your life is trying to show you at every moment. You were born with an innate power within you to create the life you've always wanted. Direct your focus on making your life a masterpiece and designing a life with love, happiness, peace, and fulfillment. It's been an honor to be with you here every Saturday on 105.9 The Region. If you've enjoyed the content, I encourage you to join me this fall on season 2 of the Steps to Happiness show with Teresa Greco as I go live on Soul Livity TV, which can be found online at soullivity.com. So follow me on Instagram at Teresa Greco _Steps to Happiness, or on Facebook at Steps to True Happiness with Teresa Greco to stay connected. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all much love, health, and happiness.
Interested in happiness and spiritual coaching and workshops? Go to teresagreco.ca. Email stepstotruehappiness@gmail.com. Follow on Instagram, Teresa Greco _Steps to Happiness, or on Facebook at Steps to True Happiness with Teresa Greco. This is the Steps to Happiness show on 105.9 The Region.